Hello, dear friends. Saturday, November 2nd, 2024. It's Patrick here. A beautiful sunny day. I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for all the comments that you've been posting on my videos. Greatly appreciate it. I want to try and address one that came in from Theo's, what was his name? Theo's Skeptomai. So Theos means God, Skeptico, the non-believer in God, from his YouTube channel. And it's an anonymous channel, unfortunately. But he did make a big, long comment. And so I'm going to try and address it as best I can. It would take me hours to get through it, but I'm going to just try and address it as best I can. So here he goes. This is what he's saying here in his comment. He says, "Hello, I am an atheist. I define atheism as suspending any acknowledgement as to the reality of any particular God until sufficient credible evidence is presented. My position is that I currently have no good reason to acknowledge the reality of any God. And here is why I currently hold to such a position. Below are 11 facts I must consider when evaluating the claim made by certain theists that a particular God exists in reality. To be clear, these are not premises for any argument which concludes there to be no gods. They are simply facts I must take into account when evaluating the verity of such a claim. If any of the following facts were to be contravened at a later time by evidence, experience, or sound judgment, I would then have good reason to acknowledge such a reality." Fair enough. Okay, so he's setting out all these reasons that he has. He has 11 reasons, right? I couldn't help think about that guy, James Randi. Remember James Randi? He used to, pardon me, sorry, just having a little bit of Java there. He used to, James Randi would debunk anybody that said they had any kind of supernatural power, like Uri Geller or these magicians and charlatans and all that kind of stuff. So I couldn't help feel reminded of that kind of type of criteria as he was presenting his comment here. So number one, he says, "I've never been presented with a functional definition of a God." Okay, let's move on. I'm gonna try to address them. Maybe I can do it more than one at a time. I personally have never observed a God. That's number two. Number three, I've never encountered any person who has claimed to have observed a God. Number four, I know of no accounts of persons claiming to have observed a God that were willing or able to demonstrate or verify their observation for authenticity, accuracy, or validity. So they're starting to morph into one another, right? They're starting to overlap a little bit. He's trying to cover all the bases. I've never been presented with any valid logical argument, which also introduced demonstrably true premises that lead deductively to an inevitable conclusion that a God exists in reality. Pardon me. Of the many logical syllogisms I have examined arguing for the reality of a God, I have found all to contain a formal or informal logical fallacy or a premise that cannot be demonstrated to be true. Logical syllogism, right? All atheists are liars. This guy's an atheist, therefore this guy's a liar. Syllogism, like a A plus B, if A then B and if A then C. Syllogism is what he's talking about here, right? And he says they all contain a formal or informal logical fallacy. Well, that's giving yourself a pretty wide berth there to escape pretty much anything. But anyway, I've never observed a phenomena in which the existence of a God was a necessary antecedent for the known or probable explanation for the causation of that phenomena. Okay, I have, I see nature and I say, Several proposed and generally accepted explanations for observable phenomena that were previously based on the agency of a God, people used to think lightning was from God, right, have subsequently been replaced with rational, natural explanations. Yeah, the weather causes the cloud, lightning, blah, 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 pressure and what have you. Each substantiated with evidence that excluded the agency of a God. I have never encountered vice versa. All right, fair enough. I've never knowingly experienced the presence of a God through intercession of angels, divine revelation, the miraculous act of divinity, or any occurrence of a supernatural event. A lot of people have, but there you go. He never has. Every phenomenon that I've ever observed appears to have emerged from necessary and sufficient antecedents over time without exception, cause and effect, right? In other words, I've never observed a phenomena, entity, process, object, event, process, substance, system, or being. He wants to cover all the bases. That was created ex nihilo, out of nothing, right? That is, instantaneously came into existence by the solitary volition of a deity. He's really trying to cover all the bases here, okay? This is a big definition, right? All claims of a supernatural or divine nature that I have been presented have either been refuted to my satisfaction or do not present as falsifiable. Can't prove that it's not true, right? All of these facts lead me to the only rational conclusion that occurs with the realities I have been presented, and that is the fact that there is no good reason for me to acknowledge the reality of any particular God. I have heard often that atheism is the denial of the Abrahamic God, but denial is the active rejection of a substantiated fact once credible evidence has been presented. Atheism is simply withholding such acknowledgement until sufficient credible evidence is introduced. It is natural, rational, and prudent to be skeptical of unsubstantiated claims, especially extraordinary ones. I welcome any cordial response. Peace. He got me with the last word because he said peace. I had to respond, right? And I will try and be as cordial as possible. Cheers. Skeptico, Mr. James Randi, thank you for your comment. And the problem I have with this is that he sets the definition, right? He says, atheism is simply withholding such acknowledgement. And my argument was that gods exist as a social construct. But he is saying that he suspends any acknowledgement as to the reality of any particular God. So he doesn't want to even recognize that somebody else has a God. He just says, no. If you were to say to him, according to his definition, right, he's defining himself out of any kind of responsibility, and of course the purpose of which is to say that he's not rejecting anything. He's just saying he's suspending any acknowledgement. You say, oh, there's a God over there that these people worship. It's this big golden calf or whatever it is. It's a statue. And for those people, that's their God and they worship it. He said, no, I don't acknowledge. There is no God over there. And if you point to this gentleman and say, no, look, you can see it. It's a 30-foot statue. It's made of bronze and they covered it in gold. No, I refuse to acknowledge any reality of any God. That's what you'd end up doing by your definition. Do you not see that? That you're lying to yourself? I had a comment from a Muslim brother and he said, there's only one God. That's the God of the Abrahamic religions. Islam, Jewish, and Christian. That's it. This Muslim brother, God bless him, he's falling into the same lie. That clickbait title that I used, I said all the atheists are liars. This gentleman, who's obviously a believer, is also falling into the same lie because there are other gods that exist, but he rejects them. So if you say, oh, there's only one God, that's fine. That means you only believe in one God, that you only worship one God, that you only accept one God. But to refuse to acknowledge the existence of other gods that other people have is being self-deceptive. It's lying to yourself, as well as if you share that opinion with other people, you're lying to them too. And that was the only point I was trying to make. It was a matter of semantics, right? It was a matter of you're saying that black is white and white is black. Say, no, there's nothing there. There is. If I look out on my thing here, and there, in front of me there's a bush, and I say, I refuse to acknowledge the existence of any bushes. Period. None. There is no bush there. And someone comes along and say, there's a bush there. No, there isn't. That's how much it makes sense, right? And so I can understand the level of effort you want to put into not believing in anything that you can't see, right? But when you get down to it, again, you're coming down to the bottom here and he's saying, I've often heard that atheism is the denial of, let's leave out the term Abrahamic, is the denial of any God, but denial is the active rejection of a substantiated fact. And the substantiated fact is that in our civilization, the history of humanity, the history of Earth, people have created for themselves these things called gods. And they worship those things, right? So the barrier that we're coming into here is a barrier between definitions. This gentleman wants to define gods in one way, and I'm defining it in a very basic cultural way. And who's being more honest? Who's being more exact? I would argue that I am. I'm saying there is a bush there in front of me. There are gods that people decide to worship or not worship. And he's denying that, right? See, atheism is simply withholding such acknowledgement until sufficient credible evidence is introduced. It is natural, rational, and prudent to be skeptical of unsubstantiating claims. What you're withholding, is the power within any God. You're withholding the reality of what that God represents as far as being able to intercede in human events, or that it deserves to be prayed to. That's what you're withholding, right? You're saying atheism simply withholding such acknowledgement. That's not what atheism is. If it is, then that's illogical in itself. That's to say, I refuse to acknowledge that those people over there have a cultural practice of fishing at midnight. I refuse to acknowledge that. No, that's what those people do. That's the word we use to describe it. We say they're fishing at midnight. Those people have a God. They worship that God. That's what a God is. It is something that is worshipped as a deity. We call it a deity. Those words are common words in the English language. It's not anything mysterious about it. There's nothing paranormal about it. It's hard for me to keep going over the same point over and over again without sounding like a broken record. And this is like a broken record too, right? So it's on both sides. So I'm trying to be cordial, and I hope that addresses your question. I hope it gives you the reason why I made that video saying that all atheists are liars. I know it's a clickbaity title, and I don't mean to say that all atheists are lying in a cultural sense where they're bad people, right? I'm saying lying in that they are refusing to acknowledge what exists in the world. And that's exactly what this guy's doing. He's saying my atheism is to refuse to acknowledge anything that you mentioned, that it's like kryptonite to them. No, there is no such a thing as a God. And I get what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that they refuse to acknowledge anything to do with the supernatural, the paranormal, the unseen realm. That to them, they don't want anything to do with that. They only want to accept what they can see, taste, touch, measure, etc. And I get that. That's totally fine, right? That people want to live their life that way. That's why I often say, good luck with your atheism. I hope it works out for you. And you're closing yourself from anything to do with anything supernatural or any type of divine intervention. Whereas there's been many, many people through history that have experienced divine interventions. That's the only way they can explain those interventions. And of course, I accept the history that was written in the 1st century about a guy that did all kinds of miraculous exploits. He said, if you don't believe me, believe the works themselves, right? And he said, unless you become like a little child, you won't enter into the kingdom of God. It takes childlike faith to believe that there is an unseen realm, right? Because we're blocked from having access to that in this physical body that we have. We cannot see, the story in the Bible of when the prophet opened his eyes and he was able to see into the unseen realm. He saw all these chariots and whatnot. It's a story to kind of to let us know that there is an unseen realm, and that story addresses it really nicely. I don't know if you've heard of that story or not in the Bible. He asked to open the guy's eyes, and he's able to see all this soldiers are battling or angels fighting or what have you, right? And or the guy with the donkey, same thing, right? The Lord opens his eyes and he sees that the donkey's trying to protect them from an angel that's about to strike this guy down. And those amazing adventures in the Bible are faith building, because we see, oh yeah, there's an unseen realm here, right? And I've experienced miraculous events in my life. I've been to the Toronto Blessing, they called it, in Toronto, and had firsthand accounts of people that experienced miracles. I've had my own personal miracles, which I don't want to share at this point or in this venue, because they're I would call them my pearls, right? My cherished experiences, and they're very real to me. And mostly is from Scripture and what I see in nature. When I see nature, I see something that gives evidence to me that it has been created by a intelligence that is beyond our understanding, right? That to only have it explained by evolution, a lot of people are very content with that and very comforting with that, because this is what Dawkins has gone through as a zoologist. He says, oh, this is because of this, and this is because of that. And the reason why this develops by itself is because they're following local rules, he calls it. Whenever he runs into a roadblock, he just creates a new term, right? Whether it's natural selection or local rules or the first thing just had to have happened. He uses these arguments. So I'll just wrap up with, your last statement here. Atheism withholding any such acknowledgement until sufficient credible evidence is introduced. There are such things as gods. There are such things as religions. They're social constructs. You'd have to, as an atheist, admit that there are these things called religions. What do people group their religion around? It's usually a deity of some type. If you say you refuse to acknowledge that deity, and by your definition, you're saying suspending any acknowledgement as to the reality, it comes down to what do you mean by the word reality? To you, say, oh, that God is not real. To those people, it is real. They're able to describe it. They'll have an image of it. And to you, to say, well, to me, it's not real, and that it doesn't have any supernatural power. There's two different things. To extend your desire to suspend any acknowledgement at all is an extreme form of blinding yourself, closing off your eyes at all, and only allowing your own particular definition of what for you is real. You say, this is real to me because I can see it, taste it, touch it, measure it, and so on. Think of something that is unseen but is still real. Love, right? Passion, your imagination. The unseen. Think of a fantasy story. You make it up. It's a fiction. It's not real. Star Trek. Is it real? It's an idea in somebody's mind. The concept of a God is a real thing. It's describable. It is something that is culturally significant. To just say, oh, I refuse to acknowledge it, and that absolves me of having to address anything to do with the question, is obviously false, because look how much effort you put into talking about God. God is mentioned in the first question. God is mentioned in the second criteria. God is mentioned in the third criteria. God is mentioned in the fourth criteria. Right? It's mentioned in the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the eighth, the ninth, and deity is mentioned in the 10th, so you didn't use the word God in the 10th. And in the 11th, you mentioned God again. In fact, you mentioned the Abrahamic God in particular. So to say that you're not acknowledging anything to do with God is self-delusion, right? It's just based on your own definition. Whereas God is a very important subject. It's obviously an important subject. It's being asked about in all 11 of your criteria. But no, that's my definition. I'm allowed to refuse to acknowledge at all. And this is what your argument ends up being. It has no substance. It's just making it up. Right? You're deluding yourself. For me to say that this paper is not here, I have to reject that idea. I have to say, no, I refuse. Refuse involves volition. You're saying you refuse to believe in a God. You refuse to acknowledge the God at all. You refuse to acknowledge even the meaning of the word. You want to create your own definition and repeat that definition over and over and over again. That is a refusal. That is no different than the word rejection. No, I'm not rejecting anything. Go ahead and live your fantasy. I just disagree 100% with the way that you're using logic in an illogical way. I hope that's cordial, but that's what it comes down to. You're looking at it, the glass half full. I'm looking at it half empty. You're saying it's this. I'm saying it's not that. And never Never shall the two meet, as far as I can tell. And unless I'm missing something very fundamental, I'll leave it at that. Live and let live. Cheers. Thank you for watching. God bless you. And I'm going to try and address some more of the comments. Some of them I might just write a reply. Some of them I might take up and make a video for them. But thank you for your comments. Greatly appreciate it. Have yourself a wonderful day, and hope to talk to you again real soon, okay? Take care. Bye for now.